You're at your old trusty boat. You call Mighty Sparrow. I'm in the city of Mardi Gras.
Welcome to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast. I'm your host, Jerome Rand. All right, and we are live. All right, tonight I just want to welcome a very old, very good friend of mine, Josh Drake, to the podcast. Josh, thank you for allowing me to come up here and do this.
Jerome, it is my pleasure. Thank you for coming up to Charleston from your boat and having me on your show. I'm very grateful.
I honestly, it's so good. This is just to give the listeners a little bit of context here. So we've been friends since way back in high school. I think you were 16, I was 18 when we first met. Mm-hmm. We've been on camping trips. We did a ski trip out to Montana. 8 of us packed into a Chevy Tahoe for 38 hours, go from Michigan out there. So we've spent some good times together. And, sort of since those trips, it was pretty much a big sort of blank spot, really. Mm-hmm. And then, since I've been bringing the boat down here to Buford and you've been up here in Charleston, finally, this last year, we finally reconnected. And then I was able to, this is the second time I've been up here?
Yeah, I think you came up before Christmas, before Thanksgiving. Yeah, it was the first time we'd seen each other in years. It's been great.
Yeah, and it is one of those things that, I've always thought that, when there's like this certain amount of time that seems to go by with friendships where I don't know. It seems like the tendency is like, well, it's been like too many years. I don't want to call and reach out. Like they'll be mad at me or whatever. And I honestly, I've always tried to really push that away and downplay that because I can't tell you the number of people that I have somehow gotten their phone number or whatever, mm-hmm. and I haven't talked to them in like we had for 10 years or something. And you call them up, and all of a sudden you're on the phone for the next hour. And it's something that makes my day, usually makes the other person's day. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes their week or their month. I think at this age, we were talking earlier, I think at this age it's so fun and so important to just reconnect with old people and have memories.
Who are you calling old?
Myself.
Me too.
I'm 40, folks. I'm 40. I'm technically over the hill. Now that I'm here, I don't really feel like I'm that old. But I used to look at people in high school and be, you're 25. That's so old. And now I'm 40, and I feel like I'm
I know it
20
is,
years old still. So
it is pretty crazy. I will give you that. And I luckily, when I'm looking at you right now, you don't look very different than when you were in high school. Honest to goodness, pretty much the same. You're not 250 pounds. You're not bald. Like it's just you basically. I would pick you out of a crowd, no problem at all. And
I'd like to thank Rogaine for that.
Those are the sponsors for the podcast tonight. Yeah. No, we can't say that. I don't want any copyright.
Just kidding.
I'm new to the podcast, so. But one of the, I guess one of the reasons that I really wanted to have you on here is that you have led quite an incredible life. So if you would maybe just give us a quick synopsis of what you do for a living right now, but then I definitely want to dive into how on earth you got there and some of the crazy travels that took you to that. So what are you doing these days?
Man, you make me sound really interesting. I don't ever see myself like that, but we can get into that later. I am currently a corporate photographer for an aerospace company here in Charleston. People can probably Google it and figure it out, but that's what I do.
Nice.
Because of that, what I do, I can share some stuff. I do 360 virtual tours of interiors of aircraft.
So that you're producing that with your camera and your eye, basically.
Yeah, so I've got a shot list, and I go in, and I've got a team out in Seattle that supports the back end of it. But I'm kind of the photographer on site, and then I have a team of developers and post-production specialists that take the images I do and form them into a very high-res, beautiful deliverable, as we call it, for customers. And our customers are people that everyone would be familiar with, from Etihad, Air China, United Airlines, American, just any airline in the world, really.
So these are typically new planes, and
Exactly. They're brand new planes that have not been transferred to the customer yet. I get in there in a tight window between Boeing ownership and customer ownership, often in the middle of the night. Literally from like 11 p.m. to maybe 4 or 5 in the morning, I'm on these airplanes, and I will be on these brand new, you can Google all this, so it's fine. I mean, $300 million airplane, all alone, crawling around the flight deck, crawling around the cabin rest, all the little extra hatches and spaces, photographing it head to toe. And then about 4 or 5 months later, it gets kicked out internally. No one can really see it unless you're on the servers, which is awesome.
how many
high res, these beautiful high res things, tours of these amazing aircraft. So
And that, yeah, I mean, when somebody's looking at one of those tours, it's basically, you hit the button and you can look and scan left and scan right. It feels like you're virtually inside of that airplane. It's not like I want to look at a picture of this and then I'll look at a picture of this. It's basically it's almost like you're turning your head, you're standing inside of it.
You can control it. It's similar. You see it in real estate photography as well as like car photography. I mean, but the camera, the quality is a whole different level at our level. That's not a boast. It's just the nature of the business. But like, you see it in the real estate photography. It's a similar concept, but it's just taken to like an A++ level. So,
and that's all those individual pictures. They're like, are they meshed together, or is this like some camera that you sit down and it actually like rotates?
yeah, it's a stitched image. It's a Nikon D850. I won't give too much away. I can give the camera away. A Nikon D850, and I manually will rotate it 10 different ways at each spot, and there'll be maybe 36 spots. So I'll go in and take about 500 different pictures in certain key locations, and then my team and I will organize them in a certain way so my team understands where they are on the aircraft, and then they all stitch together to this really beautiful, really cool UI, user interface program that they have internally, and deliver them. So, yeah, it's cool, man. I never thought I'd be here. That's one part of my job. I get to deal with VIPs and like people that come on site and stuff. So, I do portraits, take off photos. It's a pretty exciting job. I never even knew it was possible, and I'm super grateful for it, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that's definitely got to be classified as a essential job. So you probably, I mean, you're doing better than me doing my speaking gigs. I'll tell you that much.
I don't know. You have sailed around the world and hiked the AT, which are both very enviable. But yes,
Well, I do have the memories, that's for sure.
yeah, and I do have the job, so we can arm wrestle later and figure
There
out
we
who
go.
won. But
Exactly. Well, and that's, I mean, so let me ask you this: what takes longer, the actual taking of the pictures or the editing it all together? Do you do the editing as well?
no, my team is either loves me or hates me for that. I'm such a photographer. I'm kind of like, I don't do a lot of the editing. I deliver them, I organize them, I put them on the server, but there's literally a dozen people who take them off a server around the country and assemble these things. So, but there's a lot of work that goes into photographing it, just coordination, timing, working relationships on the ground. It's a big organization, and so having the ability to interact with people and get access and not talk your way into it, like it's nothing illegal, but it's like you're just dealing with a lot of personalities, relationships, and able to get your job done and done well is its own skill set. And that's what I do well. So I've kind of leveraged myself in the company. Like, look, I will do the front of the house, like a restaurant. Look, I'll be front of the house. I will greet the customer. I will take their order. I will deliver. I will manage them. Y'all cook and give me something to present.
Right.
It's kind of a front of the house, back of the house. A lot of people on my team are front and back of the house. Maybe I should be more both, but I think I've kind of positioned myself as a front of the house photographer guy, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, if you're doing what you're enjoying doing and you're able to sort of cut out the stuff that you don't, then that sounds like the great success story, to tell you the truth. I mean, for instance, I have hours and hours of videos and footage from some of my trips, and I had to go through all lengths to get that footage. and spend, months of time out at sea and all that sort of stuff. But trying to edit it together is, to me, mind-numbing. And all I can say is that when I finish a quick 3-minute little video, all I think is, wow, that could be way better. I wish I knew how to do this, and and those are poor excuses because I'm sure I could learn. But I think in the end, there's some people that have a talent for certain things like that, and some people that have a talent for other things. I mean, I'm sure if one day somebody comes along and wants to string sort of some of the stuff I have into like a documentary, they're going to be really good at that, and glad that I'm really good at going out and then, spending all this time alone out in the ocean, So.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah. I talked to a couple of my colleagues and I'm like, do you love Photoshop or do you specialize? And they're like, yeah, no, I did. I'm like, okay, that makes sense because I specialized in journalism and taking pictures and I never really cared about editing. So anyways.
Well, and thank goodness that there are people like that because it wouldn't work the other way if it was just like a one-man show all the time. That's one of the things that I miss so much from working a normal job before all the COVID stuff and everything. Is just being part of a team where you have all these different sort of facets, different people doing different things that eventually come together in this great output of productivity or whatever it is. I mean, for us, it was a boat yard. So it was hauling boats and painting boats and fixing boats and this and that. But I don't know. I do miss that. I miss being in that. I mean, because are all you guys working from home now?
Yes, unless I've got colleagues going out west who go in and photograph a certain plane, or some people travel to do that. But other than that, all the editing and post-production, thankfully, everything's, you can do from a laptop. So most people are, yes, waking up and doing the processing at home.
As long as you got the bandwidth.
Literally, yeah. No, the biggest gripes on the Friday calls is like, it took me 9 hours to download the files because we're shooting huge files. I'm like, that's a whole day right there of just trying to get it downloaded onto your laptop, let alone edit it. So
how many? Let me ask you, how many like megabytes or gigabytes?
So every scene, if it's a 50 meg camera and we take 10 pictures per scene, so you're looking at 50 megs per scene times about 36 scenes on the largest aircraft I shoot here without naming it. So anywhere from 28 to 36 scenes times 50 megs. So someone out there is better at math than I am. Y'all figure that out.
Geez, we shouldn't have had
a lot terabytes.
Pre-podcast cocktails.
Yeah, I know.
Dang it.
Hey, you told me to go ahead and have one
or
two.
I wanted you loose. I didn't want you all uptight and stuff. So.
I know. I didn't want to be either.
Okay, so that's huge. Yeah, I mean, I recently uploaded the full version, which is only 6.5 minutes long, of the departure video up on YouTube, and I want to say that's in the 700 megabyte range, something like that. And it took a little while, but I think what you're talking about is leaps and bounds beyond that.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, what's the biggest hard drive you have here? How many terabytes is it?
I don't have a hard drive that big. We have servers. I just upload right to a server
who
knows where it goes, but we have servers and they're big.
Now make sure you're not giving away any information where if a knock comes on that door already.
No, it's vague. I'm being vague.
Okay,
I'm being
good.
vague. Yes.
I just don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, let's diverge off of that a little bit. I got to tell you, I was super impressed. Last time I was up here was the first time I sort of realized that you were doing that stuff when you were showing me some of the work, and it's so impressive and it's so cool to see, an old friend after so long, I guess compared to me finding you in a rat-infested roach motel, half passed out in the gutter, clearing 40-ounce bottles off of the coffee table to sit down and sleep on your couch. So I just want to say really quickly, well done. I'm very, very impressed, my friend.
Well, thank you. I was not the other side of that story. It could have been me very easily, but I've been blessed.
Could have been
fortunate.
Yeah. Hey. Well, but it must have taken a huge amount of work to get there. Yeah,
yeah, I guess. I guess I sometimes I'm sure I sell myself short, but I think that I'm still just a guy with a camera learning, and I don't know how my career has unfolded, how it has. But
as
I
long
guess
as you don't tell me that, oh, well, no, I just posted a picture of this car on Instagram and then I got a call the next day.
yeah, no, it wasn't
Okay,
like that.
Good. All
Yeah.
right, people, you got to work for it.
There was-
Everybody listen up.
Yep. So,
Well, but I mean, photography for you, even when I think about our trips, our camping trips. So Josh and I have been on, I think, 5 or 6 1 to 2 week long camping trips. This was back in the late 90s to early 2000s, and of all of us, there were six of us friends on these trips, and of all of us, you were always the one who had an actual camera. I think, every once in a while one of us brought some crummy little thing, but you definitely were the one who was always taking the good quality pictures, and we sort of were always waiting to see what you came up with after the trips. And I mean, did it start even before that, or was that sort of the impetus to all of it?
yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, it was for any camera geeks out there, it was a Canon AE1.
Ooh.
And probably shooting, oh gosh, some sort of Kodak or Fuji.
Yeah, that was back in the day of film, folks.
Yeah.
It was
No,
classic.
it did start in Petoskey, Jerome, where we all were. I worked at the camera shop up there, Craig's Classic Camera.
Oh, you did.
That's where it all started. I moved up from Indianapolis to Petoskey in '95. My mom recognized I was bored and needed a job, so I went down and applied to the camera store. I wasn't really into photography. I ended up developing the camera. It's just got kind of in with this great couple up there, and they kind of took me under the wing, and I learned photography. And I was like, hey, you know what? I really like this, and I enjoy it. And then just kind of dabbled with it forever. And then when we were doing those trips, I was like, it was just very exploratory at that age.
Well, and I do remember, though, at that age on those trips, I think, myself and some of the other guys with our cheap little chintzy cameras, we always ended up with like the volume. We would have, 150 or 200 pictures, and you'd have maybe 25, but they were all really good, and they seemed to always sort of capture the right sort of moments and stuff. But I definitely remember you saying a lot of times, like, God, I'm always hauling this camera around and I never take any pictures, at least on our camping trips. And, we're all filthy and canoeing or hiking and all that sort of stuff. So it's a little different, but I do remember, and I still have, I'm sure, at least a few of your pictures framed, because it was always easy to tell because you were the only one who wasn't in them. And those were always the best pictures. So
That's funny.
there's definitely, I think there were some hints that you had at least a little bit of a talent right from the get-go. But I couldn't, now that you remind me, I definitely remember that little tiny camera shop. It was right downtown. Oh, my gosh.
Across the street from Flatiron. It was right next door to, oh my gosh.
Like Kilwins.
What's the pie shop that was there? Jesperson's.
Jesperson's, yeah.
Right next to
my
Jesperson's,
gosh.
yeah.
Downtown Petoskey, Michigan. For your summertime needs, head up on down to Petoskey, Michigan.
All right, now we're back from commercial break.
It's a great
Petoskey
little
Chamber
town.
of Commerce here.
And you can ski in the winter, sail in the summer, and enjoy the beautiful colors of golden foliage in the fall. Just don't come in spring because basically everything's muddy and it snows still. Sorry, Petoskey. No, but that's sort of where we grew up. It's for other Michiganders, it's at the tip of the mitt. We're below the bridge, so we're nicknamed trolls, but we're not Yoopers, and we're very proud of that.
Yep.
But I do love all my Yooper listeners if I have a single one.
Yep. No, Northern Michigan's great.
Oh no, we had
Beautiful year round, except for 6 months.
yeah, right. There we go. Well, I've always enjoyed that 4 seasons. I really have, and for as much time as I've lived down in the Caribbean, where we have 1 season, it made me miss the forests with the big trees, and it made me miss going through those seasons. But when I go back and visit give me about 2 weeks in the dead of winter, and I'm so ready to bounce back south for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've been in the South now since I was in Texas, Houston in 2005. So 15 years between Texas and Charleston. Yeah, I don't know that I could go north. I for a while I wanted to, and I was back in Indianapolis over Christmas with my kids and love seeing my family. It's so great, just drinking hot chocolate and starting happy hour at 4.
Yeah,
But,
it's dark.
That's
by
great
then.
for a week, but I would have to do that every day. I couldn't do it. I love the Sun Belt. I like Charleston. I'm happy to raise my family down here.
Well, have you, since being down here, have you had to experience any of the beautiful hurricanes that roll up here?
Every year we run away from it's called a hurrication is what we call it here. It's a hurrication.
Good man.
You either go north. We usually go north to Brevard, depending on which way it's coming, or down to like when our kids were real young, Daytona, because no one cares if you have kids. Because like 2-year-old toddlers screaming, it's like, yeah, well, we're in Daytona. What do you expect? So you go south or north. Well, actually, I'm tempted to ride one out. I kind of want to ride one out, hunker down, hit the Costco liquor store, and just ride it out.
Well, let me just tell you, you're gonna love it for about the first, I don't know, half hour to an hour, and then it's gonna be nothing but annoying, a little bit scary, depending on how bad it is, and that's about it. I've had to ride out a couple down in the Caribbean. Now, granted, down there, all the roofs are leaking and everything gets really gross and wet, and it's just rainy, and we lose all our power and everything. But if you decide to do that, let me know. I'll give you a good list of what you'll need to be able to at least run your TV and maybe your Nintendo 64.
Yeah, if we can find the special cord to make it work.
Ancient.
Yeah. GameStop did not have the cord tonight. Shocker.
Ooh, I don't know if you should mention that. That's deflammatory.
Oh,
towards them.
Could we not say it?
We'll edit that out, I guess. No, I'm pretty sure you could. Well, right now you might not be able to say GameStop just because it's such a hot topic.
It's a very hot topic.
Like I said before we started, you can say whatever as long as it doesn't have anything to do with politics and all the chaos that's going on around us. Because I want this podcast to always sort of be a break from that.
Sure.
I just want it to be easy peasy. So if you don't mind, Josh, can we just stay on track?
Just stay off the politics, doggone it. No problem. Happy to avoid it at all cost.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the listeners can feel the good vibes. It's just I don't know. It's so fun reconnecting with old friends, and I don't know. It's just one of those things where I feel like, yeah, obviously there was a gap. We were all doing our own thing. I was in the Caribbean. You were down in Texas, all sorts of stuff, and I don't know. Now I feel like it's like a new beginning.
Were those sparks? I think sparks just transfer
right?
between our fingers.
No, I do, and it does make me. It makes me extra pushy when it comes to trying to formulate another reunion camping trip, because our last big one was probably 2004, where we had at least 5 or 6 of us there.
Mm-hmm.
And although we've done a few with some other people since then, we're getting close to like the 20. Well, we're past the 20-year anniversary from the first trip. I think next year will be this fall would be the 24th or 23rd anniversary of the first trip. So,
yeah,
I'm gonna start pushing. Get ready for the group emails again.
I think we're all ready for it.
We're all getting older. Don't make me do this when we're dead. All that sort of stuff. It's coming down the pipeline.
Now, I think we were talking earlier. I think it's now that we're all over 40, it's more special having old friendships, and not everyone has what we have, man. Not everyone has. I think we take it for granted, like that we're all not super connected, but I feel like we could all pick up the phone or shoot an email, and everyone be like, get excited about it pretty quick. But yeah, dude, let's do that.
I know.
I think we've got a good group of friends, and I think it shouldn't.
Well, let me ask you this: out of the group, I know there's one other person in our group of 6 that I talk to pretty regularly, but the others, some of them, it's been 10 years or more. How about you?
Yeah, I've talked to Gunner a little bit.
Yeah. And he's up in Alaska.
Up in Alaska, yeah. Not a lot. I think we actually talked on the phone sometime last fall. That's the first time I'd heard from him in a while. But it's the same thing with you, man. It's just like picking right up where we left off.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like it's been 10 years, but it's like it hasn't. So.
I think that's the real. If anybody gets anything from this podcast, it's if there's some old friend that's on your mind and you got their contact info and you haven't talked to them in a while.
Yeah, you know what I would call
Pick
that?
up the phone.
It's sort of a tangential on that. Is that I think that's leadership. Like picking up the phone and calling someone and saying, you know what, I'm in town. Want to get together? Grab an old beer, old buddy. I think that's like an important thing that people are looking for in life. Like I'm glad you reached out. If you didn't reach out to me, I never would have known you were in Beaufort. So I think that's great. Like,
did I do the reaching out?
I think so. I don't think I would have reached out and said, "Hey, let me know when you're in Beaufort." I would never would have known you were down there.
Well, as a sailor, we have to take charge. We're decision makers by nature.
Exactly.
Well, let me ask you this: why do you think most people tend to do the opposite and not reach out and think that too much time has passed, or we had an argument 26 years ago, so it's pretty much over. I've always thought that if you start out as good friends, then there's a reason for that. But why do you think that people are so apt to just be like, yep, done?
Yeah,
I'm putting you on the spot here. That's a thinker.
Yeah, I mean, fear, insecurity, and just negative self-talk. Like, they don't want to hear from me. I haven't heard from them. They haven't reached out to me. Why do I reach out to them? I'm too busy. Where meanwhile, most people are probably just sitting around, especially during COVID, going, man, I would love it if my old buddy Jerome happened to be in town and wanted to grab a drink. That would make my day. That'd make my week, So I think just the human nature for us all to kind of get a little insecure or quiet sometimes, So that's my 2 cents. Not to take it too deep.
No. It's good. I mean, it's kind of interesting. I think on that same subject, there's been plenty of times where I have called somebody and said, I really liked that post of you and your kids, or that picture that you did, or the picture that you drew, and it's something that I saw like on social media. But it was something where I don't know. I didn't just press my thumb on the screen. I actually wanted to call them and say, "Hey, that was really cool. Tell me about that." And I don't know. I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but
I think we call that the lost art of relationship. like actually reaching out and not just liking something or commenting they know I'm interested because I liked it.
Well, and
guilty as charged, but you're taking the next step and making it an action.
Well, and that sort of reminds me. So I think my interlude into that was that maybe it's some of the norms of things like social media that while they sort of promise this coming together and we're gonna all be connected, in actuality, if you're really connected, then yeah, you're picking up the phone and being like, oh my gosh, like when somebody posts something they're really happy about or this or that, it's one thing to just sort of like it. It's another thing to actually either pick up the phone or write an email or do anything like that where you're actually reaching out and connecting and be like, oh my gosh, I just heard the news. That's fantastic. Can we talk about it? Rather than just being like, smiley face.
Yep.
done my bit here. We're still good friends. How ridiculous does that sound?
Oh, the love-hate relationship with social media and just today's world in general. Gosh.
I know. Well, yeah. And I don't mean to try and steer it that way. I definitely I think that stuff has huge pros and definitely huge cons, just like anything in the world.
Sure.
But I feel like we could easily go down a rabbit hole, and we're just tiptoeing around it, and I don't know.
No, let's not go there, because I will say this is.
I'm going to let
social
the
media
guest-
is a good thing.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful thing. It just
Hey, we're going to be pumping this podcast all over social
yeah,
media.
yeah.
Just trying to get the information. Well, all right. So to try and track around and sort of stay in any sort of direction here, we started talking about how, that little spark of photography's pretty cool. This looks like it could be something that I like to do.
Mm-hmm.
And post college, post high school, now you're sort of coming into your own, and that's where things get really interesting. Because you started, was your trip to Liberia, was that the first big adventure?
You remember that, huh? That's
Well, you told me about it last time.
Yeah.
A little bit. I didn't get all the details, and you don't have to go too far into it if you don't want to, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I just it's amazing, and I don't know why. I think the whole idea of a place like Liberia or Somalia, or just a place that's so war torn and things are so messed up, but I don't know. There's something that's always fascinated me about that, and you've actually been there, so please, just how did it all happen?
Yeah, no, that's really cool. You remember that. Where do I start? I always had a desire to travel. I grew up in today's world, I think, not a knock on social media at all. It's just the way the world. I think people grow up on social media looking at images. When I grew up back in the mid '90s, when I was coming of age, I would look through National Geographics, and National Geographics always had my mind abroad, and
Right.
I always wanted to do the culture pieces and travel, and so yada yada yada. I really always wanted to travel, and I didn't grow up in a family that traveled a lot. I mean, we're a good family, pretty well educated. We just travel back in the mid '90s. It's just not what it is today, where people have passports and people by the time they're 18 have traveled to a few different continents. It's not how it was. But I always had this desire. I was like, man, I want to go see the world. I want to go explore. I want to use my camera.
Well, you had already sort of knew that the camera was going to be the career.
Yeah, so after high school in Petoskey and doing the outdoor trips with you guys, I went to Montana, University of Montana, got a photojournalism degree with emphasis in photography. Then I ended up getting a job, I'll skip a few years, with BP, the energy company down in Texas. So I was working for corporate again.
Right.
And I was doing photography at a refinery. And I was making enough money at a young age, not a ton, but for a 25-year-old, you don't need much. I said, I had a little vacation stored up. I was like, you know what? I want to travel. And so another side note, I knew I wanted to travel, and I knew I wanted to use my camera.
Yeah.
How did I get to Liberia? I'm a Christian. I'm a believer in God and in Jesus. And when I was in Texas, I actually started going to an all-black church, an African-American church in Texas. I was one of two white guys at this church in South Houston. It was amazing. I went there for a couple of years, probably. Amazing gospel music. They do church all day. Sunday is church, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's culture. It's amazing.
Community, yeah.
Yeah, it explains a lot. I love it. They're passionate. They're very welcoming. I never felt like an outcast. I was welcome in. People smiled and were so excited every time I walked in. The music brought me to tears. Anyways, they had this pastor come over from Liberia, and he was just a total zealot for his people, and I was a eager young guy with the camera, and everything was just kind of bubbling out of me. And then I met him, and he's like, yeah, you should come to Liberia. You should come to Monrovia, and I'll give you a tour. And I was like, yeah, awesome. All right. Africa, plane ticket. Cool, whatever. Didn't really know that they had just come out of a civil war 24 months before I went there.
No research done.
Didn't
Let's
realize
just,
that it was, West Africa, where Ebola and Nile virus and
because this was what, mid?
This was 2008, and in 2006 their civil war ended in Monrovia. This is Monrovia, Liberia, butts right up to totally forgetting not Ivory Coast. What's the other one? The diamond trade, that border with Liberia and everyone else. It's a very It's a very rough part of the world.
Yeah.
And anyways, I went over there, suburban white kid, no freaking clue, excited camera, went over there 10 days. For people who aren't familiar with Africa or traveling over the, usually people think that the government's the most powerful force in the country. In Africa, predominantly it's the church, at least in sub-Saharan Africa. I was with a pastor in Liberia. So anyways, the point is he had like a relative mansion on like the coast looking over the Atlantic Ocean. It was an amazing view, beautiful view. Right outside, it was destitute poverty, war-torn.
Well, yeah. What was the? I mean,
Messed me up in a good way.
well, and obviously, so you had pretty much one of the best people in the country to have as your sort of guide in a way. But like you flew in there, he must have met you at the airport or had people to meet you.
Oh, yeah.
You must have had some shock the minute you landed there and been,
Culture shock. Yeah, I flew Houston to Brussels, and then Brussels Airlines down into I think we go through Abidjan, which is in Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, and then jumped over to Monrovia. Or maybe that was the way out. You jump through Ivory Coast and back up. Regardless, you get into Monrovia, and I mean, I'm a white kid from Carmel. I'm a white guy from northern Michigan, and getting dropped into Africa, not much chance of me blending in.
Yeah.
I had not seen much outside of maybe going to Chicago or Indianapolis a little bit, and my mind just exploded in a very good and healthy way.
yeah. Wasn't like terror and like get me back on the next plane, but
No, I loved it. It changed my life. It really did in a lot of ways. But yeah, I mean, just the drive from the airport into town, it's war torn. There's no power. It's pitch black. You're driving around. People have, AK-47s. Who knows if they freaking work? They just know they have guns. For all I know, they could be rusted and can't even fire around, but everyone's armed. It's hot. It's sticky. I'll never forget flying there. These stewardess on Brussels Airlines, are walking down the airline after you land in Abidjan and Ivory Coast, and they're spraying aerosol cans. I'm like, what is that? They're like, oh, it's just to protect against West Nile. I mean, you're in a different world. I mean, you're going from Indianapolis, like suburban kid, to I am in a different part of the world. I'm sure my parents are more concerned for me than I realize. I know I would be now if my daughters were over there. Not that there's anything concerned with Africa or Liberia, but it's just there's a lot going on.
yeah.
And I travel with a lot of naivete.
It's what they call a hot spot in
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah, a lot of naivete, but it was great. I loved it, man. I was over there, and that week so the bishop, he was a bishop and relatively powerful in the country, and the irony is, you're driving around and not a Land Cruiser, but in a little Suzuki, some little SUV that's probably like from '84.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
wheels are falling off. We had to change the
Somehow it still
tires.
works.
But you go up to these checkpoints like every 20 miles or 10 miles on a dirt road, and more armed guns, more UN troops, and this guy I'm with, and they look in, they see a white guy, and they say something, and we go. We get to go through the checkpoint. So.
So being able to feel that sort of level of protection in a place like that, I'm sure was pretty good. I mean, let me ask you this: what do you think your thoughts would have been if you were just like, you know what, I think I want to go to Liberia and I'm just going to go there by myself and I don't know anybody. Would you recommend that to anybody?
I would not recommend that to anyone.
Gotcha.
No,
All right.
no, your
That's
chance of
just
being
a little caveat.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I'll try to summarize it a little bit quicker, but I always tell people that week ripped open my mind to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
I cried that week. I prayed. I laughed. I probably looked stunned. I'll never forget walking up to an orphanage, and there's issues with orphanages. I get that. But in this place where there's war torn and there were tons of kids left alone with their parents who were just murdered. So, I mean, sometimes orphanages can be bad. Sometimes they can be good. Whole nother podcast. But I remember walking up, bro, to this orphanage day 4 after I had just been where am I? Is this real life? Yeah. Or is my life back in Texas real life? Or is my childhood real? Or is this the real world? I mean, it was mind-blowing. And I just remember walking up to this orphanage, and here come literally probably 300 children, most of them naked, just running, and it's not. It sounds cliche, running and happy. They weren't happy. They're just kids. I just started, bro. I wasn't like weeping, but I felt tears just running. I just started crying. I just burst out of crying, not like, but just like eyes wide open, and tears were just like a faucet. I was like numb, but I was crying. I was like, I don't know what is going on.
Yeah.
This is so out of my reality that this is the world.
And a good portion of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do I do with this? So the end result of that, to fast forward, so my faith took off after that. I had my mind ripped open. And at that point, I was working for corporate America or corporate Europe. I was working for BP in Texas.
Right.
And I'd been there for 3 years. I walked back in on a Monday and went up to
back to BP.
To BP.
Yeah.
You know, and once I got back from my trip, that next week I walked in and I had so much reflection, so much heart change that I walked up to my boss, who he was kind of like my dad almost. He was a great guy. He had taken me in. I was a young guy. And I was like, Neil, I can't do this.
Right.
I'm done. I'm quitting. He's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, I don't know. I can't do this. This isn't, I can't do this. Like, I'm not just going to work corporate America and like buy a house and buy a truck and die. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm done. He's like, well, do you have a plan or anything? I was like, no, but this isn't it. Like, there's a world outside of safe corporate America that I can't participate in right now. And so I moved. Well, actually, I moved up to Houston from like South Houston. And then they immediately hired me back, and I contracted for them. So ironically, I kept working for corporate America, but I freed myself up so I could do more travel and start to explore the world more.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh my, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
That's the thing is, until you're actually exposed to some of what else goes on this planet we're spinning around on. I mean, we've always, as Americans, had a really sort of bad trait of thinking that we're sort of the center, and what's going on in here is the same that goes on over there, because it's all got to be like this, right?
Of course.
But it's vastly, insanely different. And
Not even close.
oh, and in some ways it's way better when you have these communities that, even though they're struggling and they don't have money to be able to buy things, they're the ones that routinely, night after night, come together to, everybody shares food, and they make these great meals that fill up everybody, and or at least feed everybody a little bit, but the whole communities come together. I mean, compare that to a family that has all the money in the world that sits around a table and half of them are staring at their phone. It's who's happier. I guarantee you the community that's coming together that doesn't even have electricity and had to catch their food that day, sort of thing. But
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, just being exposed to that and having your world rocked. I mean, that story, I had goosebumps going up the arms listening to that. I wish we had 10 hours to just talk about some of the experiences and things that you saw in Liberia. I mean, I know you have a lot of photos from it and stuff, and I'll definitely have the link to your website. Not that I'm trying to do a senseless plug here, but
No.
if anybody is curious about Liberia outside of some of Josh's pictures, just Google it. And if you don't know anything about it, just have a seat before you do it, because that place it's different. Whew.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I like what you're saying there. The one thing that came to mind when you're saying that is, I think the difference between, developing countries in America, or from a Christian perspective, would be, poverty of spirit versus poverty of of wealth. And I think in America, in the Western world, we suffer from poverty of spirit, in the sense of we lack those interconnected relationships. Yes, it's easy to look at developing countries, third world countries, whatever the proper term is these days, and be like, they're happy with so little. It's a catch-22. They are. They are. But it's not that they don't want more, but it's just that they're just so reliant upon each other in relationships because they don't have anything else. And it's not that that's like something we need to yearn for. And this is a question. You've traveled the world, Jerome. Sometimes one of my convictions after traveling a lot through sub-Saharan Africa has always been, so many times I've sat at the end of a day on a mission trip or something here and there in Uganda or Ethiopia or Liberia, and I'm like, do we really want America for them?
Yeah.
Like, is that our end goal? Like, I don't know that I wish America on them. I mean,
No.
America's our reality, so we have to vote in it and fight it and love it and absorb it and deal with it. But I don't know that I want America or the Western world on everyone else. I mean,
well, I think in some ways I understand what you're saying, but I think when people think of that, they don't think of like, I want America. I don't want to bring America here. I want to bring freedom here, because there's this sense that if you're in that sort of situation, there must be some tyrannical leader who's living in a palace out in the jungle somewhere, who's sucking up all the resources from the country and leaving his people impoverished and stuff. And I mean, you can debate that all day long, but I think what you're saying is, is it better to want for as typical sort of the American success stories, I want my nice big house and I want to own that piece of land and put a nice little white picket fence around it and basically become this little island where I can retreat and have and live in the things that I own, as opposed to living in a very tight-knit little community that everybody's sort of in each other's business, because the only way it's going to work is that we're all depending on each other. Mm-hmm. And I would say my biggest experience with that is in the Caribbean islands, and living down there for as long as I did, and so thankfully being ingratiated into those communities the way I was probably one of the greatest gifts I've ever had, where I was at birthday parties for grandmothers and children and things like that, where I was being shown this level of acceptance that is pretty difficult to find these days in the States. And I'm not saying that you can't find it, because it is here, but it seems like these days it's not the poster child for what success is. Success isn't having, to all come together on our huge block and everybody brings something and we can all eat, because if we don't, it's, people are going to go hungry. I suppose it's still in that same sense, but it's like, real success is that we've all got our big houses on this block and we're going to throw a big kick-ass party, and it's going to be fully catered, and, so-and-so showing up, and we're going to, show it off to the world, sort of thing. I don't know. I mean, again, boy, these rabbit holes, they're so tricky. And they're slippery slopes.
I
know.
That's for sure.
I feel like we're still, just touching on them enough to sort of spark some ideas and some thoughts. But again, it is. I don't know. It's really interesting because, I mean, if you ask me, I don't want to live in a slum in in Kenya, in Nairobi. I mean, I still remember seeing that. We never actually went into it. And I actually, when I think back on it now, I wish I had. I wish there was some offer to have somebody at least go in there with me. I was too young and just too chicken shit to do it myself. But at that time, I believe it was one of the largest slums in the world, 900,000 people, 200 people to one bathroom. Just basically, as we drove past for what seemed like miles, just corrugated roof housing, just Mod Podge together, that followed the contours of the hills. It just went on and on and on. And it's just, you're just thinking to yourself, I mean, that's all people. It's just all people that basically have next to nothing, but they have each other. And I'm not saying it's great to live in there. And I'm sure a place like that is just horrific. But oh man, I don't know. It's something where it definitely changes you when you see that stuff. Changes you big time.
Yeah, one of my I think I've got 5-year-old twin daughters, Addie and Emma, and I want them to see the world. And we're talking about this conversation about how important it is to see the world, and I think it is, and I definitely am going to do everything I can to. I've been saving up airline miles for years, waiting to take my kids abroad and show them the world.
Nice.
Not just Europe, even though Europe's beautiful and amazing and easy to travel to because you can just land and you're independent. But, if I was a policymaker, I think with all this money that we're spending, one little idea I always had is like, I feel like kids in high school in America should be, every kid in America, well, maybe high school or maybe college, but not everyone goes to college, so maybe high school. Should have to go. Senior trip, have to do a semester or go abroad, and not just to like Spain or somewhere, but like go to a second or developing and get your mind open at a young age to what is real. The rest of the world really is doing it, because it's so easy to become U.S. centric, and that's fine. And this is the other thing. I am a huge patriot. I love America. I work for a great American company. I love America. We do have the greatest country in the world. And I can attest to that because I've been obviously very fortunate and very blessed and very privileged to have traveled and used my time and money, self-earned. My parents never funded any of my travel. I've chosen to travel. And I think it's important that people see the world. Whether you're on the right or the left or the middle or purple, it doesn't matter. If you're a believer or non-believer, it doesn't matter. It's just seeing the world and seeing how other people live, I think, is so important. And I wish... sorry, we're not trying to get political. I think it'd be great if every high school kid, or I guess for myself, I wish I was exposed to travel at a younger age, because I think it has the ability to really shape people's perspectives in a really healthy way, and makes you not only open your mind, but helps you appreciate what America has to offer. It is the land of opportunity. I mean, you can do anything you want in America, but until you go abroad and see what people will do to get to America, and usually can't, because you can't get a visa to the U.S. if you don't have a reason to go back to your own country. That was the big irony. Interesting thing I learned.
Right. We could go anywhere, but we wouldn't let anybody in.
Everyone except maybe 2 or 3 countries. I mean, Syria and Iran and maybe North Korea, you can't go to as an American. But every other country, they get, come on in. You know why? You know why you're allowed in as an American? Because they know you will go home. And you'll bring your dollars. But because that's why African friends that I have in Uganda and Liberia, they can't get visas to America. You know why? Because America is like, well, we don't know that you'll actually go home. It's not a harsh thing. It's just a reality. That sunk into me at one point. It's like, yeah, Americans will return home, most of them, because what isn't there to want to return to?
Right.
So,
yeah,
sorry, I'm going down a different tangent, but I just think travel's important.
I hear you. I mean, and especially at that age where, you're still basically forming your ideas of what's going on. You're young. You're a kid, and under the right sort of supervision. I mean, one, it would make sure that everybody gets a passport, which I think everybody needs to do that. I mean, everybody should have a passport. You should be able to go to Canada, go down to Mexico, whatever. They're our nearest neighbors. But then, yeah, to go and experience a place that is vastly different than our own, just to, I don't know, just broaden the horizons of everybody. I mean, because it is. And I for some reason I feel like that at some point was sort of a thing where senior year in high school, like that would be something that was normally orchestrated by the schools. But I don't know. Maybe I saw that in a movie or something. I don't know. I never got to do that. Yeah, but whatever. I know. I think my brothers probably did, but they didn't go to any place that was developing or anything like that. I think, like you had said, I think Sven, he went to Spain or something.
Yeah.
So,
and no knock on Spain. Any culture is good culture. I guess from my
absolutely.
perspective, I'm a little sarcastic, and I can be like, I haven't said it to my kids yet, but when they get older, it's like, hey, and this is not a knock. It's a very PC world, but hey, you keep it up, you're going to go to Camp Haiti. Like, I'm going to send you down to, You're
Yeah,
gonna go,
right.
you're gonna go
right
see.
down there. Yeah,
You're gonna go down to Haiti for a week and see. You think you have it bad here? You don't want to put your dishes in the dishwasher, Addie or Emma. You don't want to tie your shoe. All right, you're going to Camp
even
Haiti for a week. You know, you think
get
you've got it
me
bad living in Mount
started.
Pleasant. First class ticket to Haiti for you.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
come back and let me know if you want to put your dish in the dishes.
Well, okay. Let me. So, not to just go off on tangents because we definitely could, and I'm sure we will after this podcast is done. But so, after Liberia, how many other places? What were some of the other really memorable places that you went to?
Yeah, it's fun. I had to fill this out the other week for something for work.
Ooh, nice. It's fresh.
Yeah, I went to so after Liberia, I went back to Africa. I went to Uganda with a great organization, PMI at the time. It's One World Health now. I went quarterly, 4 times a year for about 3 years. I went to Uganda.
Oh wow.
Doing medical mission trips, and I was the camera guy, photo, video. So I'm very familiar with Uganda, as are a lot of people. It's a hot spot for mission work, but it's a beautiful country, beautiful people. Been to Uganda a ton. Out of that, I realized, you know what? I want to see some other parts of Africa. Was it fortunate to do a couple layovers in Ethiopia? So let's see. I mean, I don't want to sit here and list countries, but I will. I mean, Liberia,
Hey, throw 'em out, brother. Come on,
Liberia,
this is great.
Uganda, Ethiopia. On my honeymoon, we went to Portugal and then flew down to Morocco and then back to Portugal. Been to a lot through Europe, Italy,
Wow.
France, Portugal, Belgium.
The list
Fairly
goes
standard.
on.
I
Jeez.
did go to Korea and Japan, which is really cool. I always wanted to go over to Korea and Japan because I think in my mind, even from a photographer's perspective, I thought that the technology gap between sub-Saharan Africa and Korea and Japan, who are obviously some of the leading edge of technology.
Yeah.
I was like, that would just be a fascinating thing to see in real life. And so, in one time, when I was married, the first year I was married in 2012, my wife at the time, we went to, I think within a month, we went on another mission trip. That's where we met, to Uganda. We flew back to D.C. for 24 hours and then got on a plane and flew over to Korea. And so within 10 days, we were in sub-Saharan Africa, Washington, D.C., Korea, and then Tokyo for 3 days and back. And so that was a very crazy time clock issue. But just to see that many cultures in that sort of amount of time.
Yeah, jeez.
And, Africa, for people who have traveled there, will understand the pushing, the cutting, the crowding, you ain't got no space. Like, people are all up on you in a crowd. It's not personal. It's just culture.
Yeah.
You go to Korea, and it is dead silent in the subway. People line up in single file line. No one talks to you. There's no one there with guns telling you to do that. It is just what they do.
Yeah, yeah.
It is just quiet, reserved,
Social norms,
relatively
right?
militant. But for my wife at the time, who is super introverted, she loved it because, and I think everyone would love not being pushed up against and cut in.
This is a shy person's
But
paradise.
it's like no one looks at you. They're all on at the time. I think I was saying this earlier. I have an iPhone 8, which is sort of dated, but still a relatively large screen. At the time, back in 2012, they had screens over in Korea. I was like, to me now, I'd call it an iPad. It probably wasn't the size of an iPad, but they looked enormous. And again, that technology gap of what is Korea and Japan doing at the leading edge of there, and then versus like sub-Saharan Africa, where ironically it's always interesting to see cell phones propagated throughout Africa, where they're obviously missing a lot of other infrastructure.
Yeah,
cell phones
yeah.
are just ubiquitous. But
They're the chip.
so, anyways, Korea, Japan, Argentina, Chile, Nicaragua, Mexico, Honduras, then Europe, decent part of Europe.
Have you been to Antarctica?
I have not.
Ooh.
I have not been to Antarctica.
Well, you haven't lived.
I haven't lived.
That's
Canada.
well-
I have been to Canada.
Nice.
I've been to
Okay.
There
There you go.
I will say this
They're
to Canada.
connected to
Canada,
the
you have
Arctic.
beautiful national parks and very, very scary border patrol. There's nothing more. I've been to a lot of countries, relative. Canada has some real strict
What? what?
They're
They're
scary.
always
They
so
scare you.
crossing over the bridge into Windsor. They're great.
Flew into
Just let 'em
Calgary,
right
and they were
through.
like, "What are you doing here?" I'm going to the park. What park? Banff. Where are you staying? And he was like, "Dude, I'm here to take a look at a grizzly, maybe." And you were like making me scared right now. Okay, here
That's
to
too
drop
funny.
some money in your country.
Well, hey, they wouldn't let me through the Northwest Passage, so.
Yeah, they're strict.
Yeah. Well, all right. So I guess what was besides the early ones? Were there any like really key memorable moments? Things that just were just game changers, places that you would never forget.
I'm going to take this one back to Africa because what's popping out of my head right now is this experience when I was in Uganda on a medical mission trip. And I had laid over. I was there for about 6 weeks. So a trip came, and then I stayed, and I was there and I lived in Uganda for like 6 or 7 weeks. And I was with some friends, and they were running the clinic, and I was just there. And we went to the local AIDS clinic, and I was able to sit in on this consultation with this mother and child with my friend Amanda at the time. Not at the time, she's still a good friend, but I was with Amanda at the time, and she was doing like research or interviewing them. And man, bro, it struck me. This test came back so there's this mother, and her son just had an HIV test, and it came back negative. Mm-hmm. The mother started crying. I was like, "Oh, that's wonderful. Doesn't have HIV." She's like, "No." She's really upset that he doesn't have AIDS. I'm like, I'm sorry, what? She's like, "Yeah, she's wished that he had AIDS." I was like, why? Like, what is going on here? Like, this is, I don't understand this. Well, because he gets free health care, and it's a relatively benign disease now because it's been so mitigated that it's really just a ticket to free health care. That paradigm shift, I mean, Bitmoji mind blown. I mean, that took me away. That was such a different. I don't even have to talk about it. That just blew my mind. It took me months to even just sit on that and be like,
I've never even. I mean, is it something that you can basically live the whole rest of your life with, even in a place like that, or is it just that you can? Are they making the choice of, well, he can have health care for the next 25 years until he dies of this, or he can have no health care for the rest of his life, and who knows what will happen.
well, right. If he doesn't have health care, he could die from, just getting a cut and it get infected and he just gets pieced out at
malaria or
17.
any of those things, right?
Or, but if you have HIV, then you fall under all these, international guidelines and pretty much international health care. Like if, due to the eradication of HIV, if you have someone who has HIV and the drugs are so good now that it's not really a threat like it was when it was first known. So, like it's pretty much free healthcare. And so just the idea in my relatively young mind that a mom would be heartbroken that her kid didn't have HIV took me a while to get, which of course now I understand and it makes sense, but it's still kind of a quagmire of me to think about. So, there's that story. And then, Morocco's beautiful.
Process that.
Yeah, I know. Morocco's beautiful. Portugal, not as hidden quiet as it once was, but it's still a really cool spot in Europe, I think, to go if you've got time. I photographed a wedding in Tuscany the other year, and for a while I kind of saw Italy as kind of like Disneyland of Europe. Like, I don't want to go to Italy. Like, it's just going to be every other American and Western tourist with a camera. Like, there's nothing new in Italy. Then I went to Tuscany, and I was like, oh, okay, I get. All right, I get it now. Okay, this is actually completely ideal, and just like you see in the magazine. So go Tuscany.
Well, let me. How about this then? What if you could only choose one? If you had to choose one place that was like completely on your bucket list, top shelf, number one, of place that you wanted to be able to go and take pictures of, where would that be? Now I'm putting you right on the spot.
Oof, that I haven't been to. That I want to go to.
Haven't been there. Number one, got to see it before you die.
So I have this thing, and you'll know I'm a mountain guy in general. I love mountain ranges. I prided myself back in the day looking at Powder Magazine and being able to, before I read the caption, identify what mountain range it was, whether it was the Wasatch, whether it was Colorado, whether it was the Alps or the Andes. That said, I've been to the Andes, I've been to the Rockies, I've been to the Canadian Rockies, I've been to the Alps, sort of. I went to Switzerland. Oh, Switzerland's badass. Switzerland's amazing. So along that line, and I am on the spot, I'm going to go with... Can I give you a region instead of a country?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like the Himalaya region. I mean, like,
Right.
you know, like
That's what
Nepal,
I was
northern
like, he's
India,
gonna say
Mongolia,
Everest.
China. That just because I've never seen the Himalayas. Like I've been to most major mountain ranges. I mean, I know millions of other little ones, but I guess I would like to go there. For mountains, now that you say that, I'm going to skip over and actually say I really want to go to the Middle East more.
Oh, that is a place that
Yeah.
I have been fascinated with my entire life, and I the closest I've ever been was living in Cyprus for, I think it was like 2 months, maybe 3 months, and you know that's right there, pretty much just south of Turkey, right next to Syria, all that sort of stuff, and it was during I think it was our second round in Iraq, so it wasn't 100% safe, but man, all I could think of is I'm so close to the pyramids. I'm so close to all these places that have so much history, the cradle of civilization, just, but it's all so messed up over there. And it just, I mean, if you want to talk about places that are really unsafe, that would be the region.
Yeah, but I
Unfortunately,
think that's
terrible.
where I'd want to go the most. It's like it is Israel, Lebanon, Jordan. I couldn't really get into Syria, but I've actually had 2 tickets booked to Turkey. One alone after the oil spill that I worked. I was like, I'm going to go and take.
You
I'm
never
going to go
have to-
travel through Paul's journey, like in the Bible. It's like, I'm going to go travel from like Greece to Turkey down. I'm going to go do it with my camera. I'm going to go take 6 months. I'm going to travel to the Middle East. Canceled it because I realized it was kind of a crazy idea. Next time,
Well, you could still go to Istanbul.
yeah.
I've been there.
I had a ticket booked to Istanbul with my wife at the time, and we found out we were pregnant with twins. God bless them, love them, great decision. But we had to cancel. We had tickets booked. Like
You
I had
sound a little
points.
bitter. I feel like maybe the Christmas.
I love you,
presents
girls. If you're
aren't so
listening,
great.
I love you. You're better than a trip to Turkey. However, we did have like a 10-day trip around the coast of Turkey booked. And it was a combination of the twins, and it was right when ISIS was really starting to come out on the scene. And we had friends say, you might not want to go to southern Turkey where it butts up against Syria. Just a hint.
Right. Well, Turkey's huge, though. I mean, the
history, dude. I mean, half the Bible is from Turkey.
Oh, it's
New
insane.
Testament.
Göbekli Tepe is in Turkey. They still don't even know how old that place actually is. It's insane.
Cappadocia looks amazing. The caves.
That whole place is. I'll tell you what. The strangest coincidence, I think, one of the strangest coincidences I've ever had in my life. We sailed from Antigua across and wound up sailing finally after like 40 days into Marmaris, Turkey, which is on sort of the southwestern coast. And the day we pulled in, we're washing down the boat midday, been there for like 4 hours, and there is I don't know if it was total, it was pretty close, total eclipse of the sun.
Wow.
And they have that on their flag. I believe
Yeah.
it's an eclipse. It might be just like
The crescent moon, yeah.
but it's basically there, and we're pulling into Turkey. This is a place I've always wanted to go, and really, luckily, I had sort of expressed my interest in going to Istanbul before I went home, and they booked my flights out of there like 4 days later, and so I was able to spend 3 days in that city, and talk about mind blown. I mean, when you turn the corner and see the Blue Mosque,
wow.
you feel like you're walking into the set of Star Wars. It's so immense, and it's so unusually shaped, and the minarets and the domes, and you go in there, and the columns that are holding that place up are as big as a room. It's just it's almost enough to make like for a religious experience. It's just it's
sure.
something where you see it and I don't know. It was absolutely amazing, but there's so much out there to see. It is crazy, and if you ever get the chance, you gotta just go for it. You definitely want to prepare always and do your research and do all that because you want to do it intelligently and safely. But
I also think, absolutely. But I can get frustrated with the amount of fear that some Americans have with traveling.
well, yeah, there's
I'm like,
a lot of
give it up,
misconceptions,
people.
yeah.
Like,
well, and our
it's not that scary to travel.
our State Department, not to get political or anything, but they put travel warnings out for some places that you're just like, what? Like, why is this on the danger list here?
And talk about rabbit holes. I mean, if you want to sit and Google plane crashes, you'll never fly again. If you want to Google, incidents abroad, like you're never going to travel. But just don't do the Googling and just go travel and see how amazing people are. We're all humans. They're interested. People are a lot more gracious abroad than I think that Americans are. When was the last time you saw someone at the store who was from a different country? Oh, would you like to come over for dinner? That happened to me in Morocco, deep in the country, not in a city center. Deep out in the country.
Yeah.
And these people are inviting us into their homes in tea where everyone's wearing, all the women are wearing coverings, and it is a different world. We're on the border of Algeria, and it was a different place. And they're still welcoming us in and having tea. I mean, it was borderline, we got back from that trip, and 2 weeks later is when the terrorist bombed the BP Algeria plant. I was like, I was within, 100 miles of that last week.
Right.
I had tea with them. But they decided to go ahead and bomb plant. So
well, I still remember. I think it was my last day in Istanbul, and everything just went by so fast that I hooked into getting a guide for the day. I was like, I really just want to at least see the last few things that I don't really know about. So I hired a guide, and one of the stops that we went to that day was the Sultan's tombs. And it's a place where I'm this was so long ago, but they have all the sultans from 13th century stuff like that, all in their tombs, and you get to walk through this room. And we're walking by, and this guy was great. And again, you got to remember, this is a time where we were at war with the Middle East and all this sort of stuff, and we're looking, and sort of he's giving me a little rundown, and the one sign on there. It was some sultan, 1,000 years ago, and on his thing, the little information placard said, invaded Baghdad in blah, 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 1302 or something. And the guy sort of elbows me, and he's like, see, we did it too. Don't even worry about it. And it was just, I don't know. I mean, obviously not a funny subject, war and killing people, all sorts of stuff, but I don't know. It just goes to show that you can be in the strangest faraway place with people that, for all intents and purposes, you probably shouldn't like because this, that, and the other thing. And you find this common ground. And that's something, just that day that I got to spend with that guy is something I'll never forget.
Sure.
And of that whole day, that one thing that I will absolutely never forget was when he elbowed me and said, yeah, we've all done it. Don't worry about it. And it is, those are the experiences that are impossible to find through a YouTube video. You're never going to get it by reading a book. You actually have to go there.
And it changes your understanding of the human condition, the human spirit, the human relatability. I feel like people don't, we struggle in America to relate to others sometimes. And I feel like travel can really help you relate to other people,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. I don't know. This story, it didn't happen to me. One little caveat, if I can share it just a second.
Sure.
Where was it? It was when we were in Morocco, and we had a guide. And he was telling me that, he has a friend or knows of a friend who's we were in Morocco. Maybe it was over in Algeria or Tunisia or something, or Chad, one of the North African, not sub-Saharan, but obviously North Africa.
Pull it
Saharan
together,
countries.
man.
Sorry.
God, you should have an atlas.
This guy, this local guy who's a tour guide, never been to, never formally educated, but he knows 5 different languages. There's this guy, he's He knows English. He knows German. He knows like Japanese. He knows Arabic. All these things. I just found it absolutely fascinating that here's a guy who's been relatively uneducated but can speak like some of the most complex languages in the world.
Right.
And you can come across this guy in the middle of a desert in northern Africa. Here he is, like riding a camel with probably some beautiful garb on, that's like centuries old style, and he can speak like Japanese fluently because he's had enough Japanese tourists come through, and Arabic, which is his native language, and probably English, and probably French and German. And I'm like, here I am growing up in like Carmel, Indiana, like playing soccer on the weekend, and like here's this guy growing up on a camel speaking like 5 languages. I'm like, who's got a more interesting life? I don't know. Like, why is he bad and I'm good? I don't know. I mean, let's just all frickin' travel a little bit more and understand that we're all like, related. It's
really
difficult.
Puts into question the whole definition, or at least how some people might define being educated. Where who's really more educated in life or in cultures and stuff. Obviously, that guy, he's been there, seen that, done that, learned that, and has all that knowledge. And that is, I think our sort of idea growing up is high school, college, career experience. That's how you're gonna become an educated top person, and in a lot of ways you are missing out on a huge chunk.
So with that equation though, and I'm sitting here thinking like, of course, high school, middle school, high school, college, career. Where in the American equation is hey, here's the equation where you go off and explore the world and learn about what you really want to do. Maybe that's something that needs to change in America. Between high school and college, like the gap year, or maybe it's like a gap years, plural. I mean, or you incorporate some of the travel and the exploratory thinking, the global thinking at an earlier age where people, so you can break the equation up. I mean, let's change the equation, America, and like, in other words, a little bit more scarier. And that's the one thing with social media. We love social media, but it does bring the whole world right to the palm of your hand. But that doesn't still take away the experience that you have from smelling the air and having the conversations and maybe being scared and maybe breaking through some paradigm shifts of your own while you're abroad. I think you and I are both big proponents of travel, so we're a little biased, but I just think it's so important.
Well, and not to even mention the C word, but once this whole stuff is finished, I think one of the things that is a good takeaway from all the stuff that's gone on in 2020 is that I think it was a wake-up call for a lot of people to say, hey, if there's things that you want to do and places that you want to see, you may lose your ability to actually do that. Because, I mean, basically 2020 was a write-off. I wasn't going to go anywhere. I sailed around the Atlantic. I would have loved to have stopped in a few places, but I didn't feel like it was an appropriate time for some solo sailor to pull into the Azores or the Cape Verde Islands and sort of just be that guy. And I know that for me, one of the first things I want to do is just get out there and go somewhere and experience something. Because right now, I still feel like basically the party's sort of closed still. The bar is closed. You can't, I'm not going to go and travel to a different country right now. It just doesn't feel like the appropriate time. And
sure,
I don't know. It's one of those things where hopefully silver lining, trying to look at the bright side, is that having everybody going through this whole situation will sort of, in turn, when it does normalize, then people will be like, you know what? You know how we've always wanted to go over and see France? Well, what do you say, honey? Let's do it. We sure don't want to wait until something else happens and we can't actually go and see it.
Yeah.
Do you need to let the pup out?
No, I can't. She is getting excited, but
yeah, she is. She's jealous because you're not focusing on her.
I know she's a big baby. She's a big baby. No, yeah, we can wrap it up. But the last point, I mean, just to kind of go off your last point, is that if we're looking for relatedness, I'm always looking for relatedness. The whole world's been through COVID.
Yeah. Oh,
so
everybody has.
If you're, just say you're going to France for the first time or wherever you want to go, you got something to talk about. Hey, how did you? Just ask someone, hey, how'd you handle COVID?
Oh,
Boom.
like icebreaker.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it sounds cheesy when we call it an icebreaker, but it's a conversation starter.
I've never.
I mean, the whole world is going through the same thing, so
very insightful.
we're all related.
We all have the ultimate icebreaker now.
There you go.
Wow, Drake, that's that's the first time I've ever heard of that. And that is probably the ultimate way to see the whole situation see it as something that possibly could turn into a good. But yeah, I mean, you could go anywhere and say to anybody, man, how was it for you? Because, wow, it got a little scary over there. And, blah, blah, blah. Wow. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, because we're well over an hour at this point. I feel like we could literally talk on and on. I think we're definitely going to have to do this again.
I think so. It's been a lot more fun than I anticipated.
I know. See, you were nervous before, and now you don't trust me. People don't trust me.
Thank you, Kirkland Vodka.
There we go. But yeah, I mean, it's been fabulous to have you on the show, and I think this will be very interesting for anybody that listens and stuff. But do you want to plug maybe like just your website or something? Give us something that the listeners can at least check out some of your work. You got to do that.
Yeah, sure. JoshuaDrakePhotography.com, and then Joshua Drake Photo is the handle on Instagram. So you'll be able to see some current stuff. I've got a drone license, so I do a lot of aerials here in South Carolina.
Yeah,
A lot of my international work is going to be more on my website. I've tailored it back some, but you'll get a good idea of what I do. So yeah, JoshuaDrakePhotography.com and Joshua Drake Photo on Instagram if you're interested.
Well, and I'll put those in the description. I'll keep the description on this one pretty short so that I can just include those, because I'm sure people will want to definitely see that. A few examples. I mean, I know just the first thing I wanted to see was the shots from Liberia, and they're absolutely breathtaking. So,
well, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Josh, I look forward to camping again and just basically staying reconnected. So I can't thank you enough. And until next time, which hopefully will be really, really soon. That's it.
Thanks a lot.
You're at your old trusty boat. You call my tea sparrow. I'm in the city of Mardi Gras.
Hey, everybody, just a quick note. If you enjoy this podcast, you can now support it. Just go to Podbean online, search Sailing into Oblivion, and you can become one of my patrons. It would be hugely appreciated and make sure that this podcast keeps going on and on. Thanks for listening.